session. This is our first from Netherlands, and he will tell us about his experience with electron microscopy on the Fe Fischer-Tropsch.
Yes, I know. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers. I think we have had wonderful days already. I myself appreciate very much to talk about the Fischer-Tropsch synthesis. It gave me the opportunity to combine research in ferromagnetism and electron microscopy. Moreover, I can combine it with making slides by means of the computer. That are three items I like to do. Hopefully the first slide is giving you the title of the lecture, and Mr. Voeland is here, he did the work, and Mr. Donald did a number of experiments on the growth of carbon. There is a problem, well known, with Fischer-Tropsch. I think that the rapid deactivation of catalysts, and one of the most important sources of deactivation is deactivation by carbon. There are three mechanisms of the deactivation: encapsulation, disintegration of the catalyst body, and finally formation of stable carbides. And I indicated in the next figure the different mechanisms. On the left-hand side you can see the encapsulation. Today I hope to show you some good micrographs of the encapsulation. On the right-hand side is the disintegration of the bodies of the catalyst, and I have some good micrographs too for the encapsulation, but they are too dark, and I don't want to sit you too long in the dark as now over here. This brings about that you get carbon fibers growing out of the metal particles, and they are mechanically very strong, and they are disintegrating your catalyst, which is quite a disaster. You get a high pressure drop. It's very difficult to remove the catalyst out of the reactor. And finally, you are getting stable carbides. They are no longer decomposing the carbon monoxide, neither you can hydrogenate the carbon out of the catalyst. Well, perhaps we can have slightly more light. I think it's horrible to sit in the dark and be able to make any notes. What I want to do is indicate the formation of the carbides. Number one, by doing some equilibrium experiments, by mentioning some temperature programmed hydrogenation experiment, and subsequently make magnetic measurements, and then we are talking about the segregation and dissolution of carbon into nickel and iron. First of all, some thermodynamics. We have done the thermodynamics on nickel and on iron, and I'm just mentioning here the results on nickel. It turns out that if you are measuring the thermodynamics, it is apparent that the CH4 is more stable in contact with nickel than if it is in contact with graphite. You can see that, appreciate that from the data over here. These are the data experimentally measured on our nickel catalyst, and these are the data measured for nickel carbide, and over here we have the data for graphite. So we certainly have, if we are contacting methane with the nickel catalyst, we have nickel with the nickel carbide. Now you can say this is an endothermic reaction. There may be some effect on endothermic. We did it here for an exothermic reaction, and again you find there is an equilibrium with the carbide, and there is no equilibrium with the graphite over here. We have agreeing results of Russell Nielsen and our own data. So that indicates that first of all you are getting the carbide, but the carbide may decompose to carbon and the metal. I think that's a very important item. Just to show that over here, I have some temperature programmed hydrogenation results. It's very difficult. Over here the temperature. We are raising the temperature with 6 degrees K per minute. And over here is the amount of methane that is being formed. And if you have until a very short reaction, you are getting this type of curve. So you have a highly reactive carbon that is at a low temperature already reacting to methane. If you have your catalyst carbide for 98%, and this is nickel, and you can establish that by measuring the ferromagnetism, then you have a very high methane formation, again at a low temperature. And there is present here more carbon than you can accommodate into the nickel. So actually you get also the graphite or the other carbon that has been segregated out of the nickel, you can rather easily hydrogenate it. Now if you are keeping material, the loaded catalyst loaded by the carbon for a period of say 1 hour at a high temperature, you get a decomposition, and then the graphite you are having then is rather difficult to hydrogenate. So there is a decomposition of the carbide into graphite and into the metal. That is from the temperature programmed hydrogenation measurement. Now we are considering the magnetic measurement. We are using the Curie temperature because I now want to go over to iron, and whereas nickel carbide is not ferromagnetic, the difficulty is that the iron carbides are still ferromagnetic. So what we are using is the Curie temperature. And the idea is that at low temperatures, due to the low effect of the entropy, almost all the magnetic moments are aligned, whereas at higher temperature you are losing the alignment gradually, which brings about that the average moment drops as a function of temperature. Now with metallic iron, you have a very high Curie temperature, you have to raise the thermal energy very much to get rid of the alignment, whereas with the different carbides you have different Curie temperatures. So we are measuring the ferromagnetism as a function of the temperature, and we are considering just the drop in the ferromagnetism, the kind of carbides. We have confirmed all these experiments by Nussbauer experiments, which has been done by Van der Kraan in Delft. So let's first see what happens if we have an iron alumina catalyst, and we are carrying out a Fischer-Tropsch synthesis for 72 hours. Here is indicating the time in kiloseconds. And over here the magnetization. And then you can see that there is a very rapid drop in magnetization. So you get very soon already a completely carbided iron catalyst, very rapid carbonization. Now about the stability of the carbide. And to appreciate the stability, we first take this iron on alumina catalyst after half an hour of Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, and we are measuring magnetization as a function of the temperature, and we stopped the Fischer-Tropsch. So we cooled down, and then we are going and heating up. And over here, you see the drop, as I told you, the drop in the ferromagnetism. So this Curie temperature is just characteristics for the Heg carbide, that is the Fe5C2 carbide. If you now are arriving at that temperature, there is a rise in magnetization, which indicates that there is a decomposition of a carbide into a material of a higher Curie temperature. And as I told you, metallic iron has a high Curie temperature, so the carbide is not stable, there is a decomposition of the carbide. And then we are coming at a second carbide, having a higher temperature, that is the absolute prime carbide, Fe2.2C. Higher Curie temperature, and again that is decomposing, and it's decomposing to metallic iron, because if we are, so here we are raising the temperature, and now we are decreasing the temperature, and if you are extrapolating, then you have exactly the temperature of metallic iron, and if you go down the temperature over here, you see the Heg carbide coming up. And I just want you to remind this distance, the amount of carbide that can be decomposed. Because if we are extending the period of Fischer-Tropsch synthesis from 1/2 hour to 72 hours, and we are doing the same experiment, you can see there is again a decomposition of the carbide. Then we get the next carbide, again the decomposition, but now you can see that the total amount of carbide that we can decompose has dropped very substantially. And this implies that we have the formation of more of the stable Heg carbide. And later on, it will be apparent that the Heg carbide is not active in Fischer-Tropsch synthesis. So here we have just for our eyes, I see the the deactivation of the catalyst by formation of a stable carbide. Let's now consider the segregation of graphite. Over here we have an iron particle, and I hope you can see the graphite layers. There is a discussion, are you having graphite or not, but modern high-resolution electron microscope can just show you the graphite layer. And though the ordering of the graphite layers amongst each other is not, may not be as good as in graphite, you can see the graphite layer sitting there. It's important that this particle is completely encapsulated in graphite. That's very important, and moreover you have to realize that though you can shift graphite layers rather easily over one another, the graphite layers itself are extremely strong. Isn't it all that carbon fibers are produced out of graphite layers oriented in the axis of the fibers? So we have particles encapsulated in a very strong medium. Well, I hope that you can see the graphite layers sitting around this particle with very high magnification. So definitely the particles are just surrounded by graphite layers. And sometimes you have a row of these filaments, and then you have the particles sitting on top. And I just want to mention now that the shape of the particles you will never get if you have usual supported particles. The shape is bringing about by the carbon. And again, here you have an iron particle sitting on top of the filament. You see it's almost encapsulated. Here is an iron, part of iron that has been segregated from that iron particle in the dark field. You can see that's graphite, that's the dark field on the graphite layer, so there's no discussion, graphite. And here we have the iron particles sitting. Let's now see what happens with the phase of the carbon. It's just like having a sink that is partially or more or less plugged. There is just a constant flow, not of water from the tap, but of carbon coming on the surface. And part of the carbon can be removed as hydrocarbon, but another part of the carbon is penetrated, and you get formation of that carbide. And we have seen from the experiment that you get a rather rapid formation of the carbide. Now, subsequently, you are having filled the sink, and then you get kind of an overflow, and finally you get a graphite layer. And it's not just an artist impression, but I remind you of the former figure. We have seen these graphite layers just surrounding the particle. So what happens now, if thermodynamics are trying to get their way, and if there is a segregation of carbon, well, you get a huge mechanical strength on the particle. And that I find is very important. So far, we have always seen metal particles as solid blocks, having just a shape that cannot be changed. I think we have to consider metal particles, especially small metal particles, just like mercury drops. We have seen that actually in the electron microscope. If you are vapor depositing metal particles, you can see a liquid-like coalescence. So you can reshape them, and actually this particle is coming under such a pressure that it's being squeezed out. And if it's being squeezed out, there is an opportunity that you get this filamentary grow, but there is also a possibility that you get a new encapsulation, and you see in the micrographs the number of these capsules. Now, first of all, I have here a micrograph where you can see an iron particle, and we just captured it. Very lucky, which is being squeezed out of the carbon. So here's the carbon capsule, and here is being squeezed out. This micrograph, using the microphone. There's one piece on down.
The battery is on the floor there.
Well, I think you are much quieter than a number of Dutch students, and I always have to talk to the Dutch students without the microphone, so I will try to do it without the microphone again. Though I must have some lower lights.
I will do it when it is fixed.
Oh, you fixed everything, but I got some more time, is it?
You can look at the other side.
Very good.
Well, I make my voice louder, Vladimir, no problem. Well, just to show you the iron particles and their change in shape, I hope you can see here is an iron particle, and that is just being squeezed out. So you get a little more circular cross-section. Here you have again an iron particle that is being squeezed out. Over here, we have a filament growth. So there, the iron particle is not getting the opportunity to be encapsulated, and we get the filament growth. And these filaments are extremely strong. And here you can see just the remaining capsules. So particle is going from being encapsulated to being encapsulated, and just going further. And you can see the peculiar shape of the particles just by the very strong effect of the carbon. Just see where I have this device. No, there we are again. Let me see it. Difficult device. So if you want to prevent the growth, especially of filamentary carbon, which is disastrous for your catalyst, you can, number one, anchor the active metal particles to the support. If they are anchored, you cannot fully encapsulate them with carbon, and you don't get it squeezing out of the particles. We did that with nickel. We were running a nickel catalyst without having any filamentary growth of carbon for 3 months. If you are trying to do the same with iron on silica, you are just in between the devil and the deep blue sea. The iron is reacting with the silica too strong, and you get a type of a green glass, or you are reducing your iron out of your silica, and then you get iron particles that are no longer very well fixed to the silica. So it's difficult. Here, I just want to discuss to prevent formation of the metal carbides by alloying. You can think if I'm making a copper iron alloy, and tomorrow I will talk about the, come on.
Rocco, keep it on.
Turn it the other way.
Go back. Rocco, could you take?
There we are. If you are doing the alloying with copper, you have no dissociation of CO on copper, but you neither have formation of carbide. So you may think that you are doing it quite well with copper. So we produced in a very special way, tomorrow I will indicate, we produced a good alloyed copper catalyst. We have no dissolution of the iron out of the alloy into the support, which is a big risk. And you can see from our magnetic work whether we succeeded in preventing the formation of carbide, and we didn't succeed at all. You get a very rapid segregation of iron carbide from the iron copper alloy. So again, you can see after 1/2 hour of Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, there is the carbide, the ferromagnetic carbide. Here we get a decomposition, and we get a tremendous decomposition. So this is a highly active catalyst. We have a lot of a very unstable carbide which is easy to decompose. The next slide shows you the situation after 72 hours, and then you can see that the decomposition of the carbide has dropped tremendously. So we have got a much more stable carbide. This is again the nasty hack carbide that is too stable, and we get a loss in the activity of the catalyst. Well, so just to summarize now all the work, the formation of carbides during exposure to CO hydrogen has been demonstrated. I think there is no discussion. You get just a lot of metal carbides, but it's just as with the zinc, you are adding carbon atoms, they are forming carbides, and you are removing carbon atoms just by segregation. So you get encapsulation of metal particles by the mechanical strong graphite layers, and you get a decomposition of the metal carbides, which leads to large stresses on the metal particles and consequently to major changes in the particle shape. finally the conclusions, you get a repeated encapsulation squeezing of metal particles out of the graphite enclosures, and that gives you the chains of empty enclosures, and there always is a balance between the rate of decomposition of carbon on the metal surface and the carbon through the metal particles, which can give you filamentary growth. Well, in spite of all the difficulties with the technique, I hope that I give you some impression of the work we are doing, the combination of ferromagnetism, electron microscopy, and chemical kinetics, and I thank you for your attention.
John, I'd like to ask you about the conditions under which the encapsulation of these particles by graphite occurs. What conditions of temperature and also hydrogen to CO ratio?
Yes, 250 degrees C till 275 degrees C. We have about 1 atmosphere. We have hydrogen CO, I think 1 to 1 or 2 to 1 layer. What's about it? 2 to 1 hydrogen to carbon monoxide ratio.
And how long does it take for this to form?
Well, that runs, depending upon the metal, rather rapidly. So I think within 1 hour you have already a fair amount of encapsulated particles, but sometimes if you are raising slightly the temperature, it can be a matter of a quarter of an hour.
Do you have to go to higher temperatures in order to get the filaments?
Generally, yes. But not too high temperature. Well, that heavily depends upon the availability of carbon. So far we have found that carbon monoxide is rather rapidly forming the filaments, let's say at temperature 300 to 400 degrees C, whereas going from methane, for instance, you need to have higher temperatures. Ethylene is somewhere in between.
Do they form in the presence of hydrogen and CO?
Oh, for sure, and I can tell you they form better in the presence of hydrogen, because you must remove some carbon off the surface. If you are having too rapid the addition of carbon to the surface, you get the sink, isn't it? And then you get a rapid encapsulation.
Well, I think that agrees with some of our observations pretty much on nickel, where we observed filamentous formation at about 300 to 400 degrees.
Yes. But I think the tricky thing is, it is a balance. It's not thermodynamic, so I think the growth of filaments and the whole behavior just depends upon the dynamic conditions. You are adding carbon, and if you are adding carbon rapidly, you get encapsulation, and there is just an area when you have that filamentary growth.
We found there was an induction period for the formation of the filament. Do you see that also?
Yes.
As far as I remember, you have quite large nickel and iron particle when you have this filament formation.
Well, that depends. With nickel, we never have seen filament formation with nickel particles smaller than 10 nanometer, than 100 angstrom. But you can say that the smaller nickel particles are well attached to the support, and then you cannot have encapsulation with them. With iron, and that is more easy to get rid of the support, we have very tiny filaments. And if you take, for instance, iron copper, and you are treating the catalyst rather badly, you can have filaments, let's say, of a diameter of 20 angstrom.
Yeah, but in iron copper case, you didn't find any filament formation, at least.
If you are producing the catalyst very good, no.
Yeah. Now, is it due to the change in the particle size, or simply an alloying effect? Or the third option is to anchor it to the support?
I think it is mainly the anchoring to something else which is not covered by carbon. So if you have the particles isolated or rather loosely bonded to the support, you can just encapsulate them completely, and then you can get a shape that is favorable for the filamentary growth. If the particles are well adhered, let's say, to copper or another alloy, then it's difficult. So with our iron copper alloys, but we have to prepare them in a very special way, and we'll talk about that tomorrow, then we don't have that filamentary growth. If you have prepared your alloy more loosely, you have some iron particles, some copper particles, then still you can have this filamentary
All right.
growth.
So whenever you have the small particles stabilized, you have no filament formation.
Oh, so I am not, you should have no filament formation as your particles inside the molecular sieve.
Just to follow up on pressure, if you increase pressure, does filament formation stop then? You're operating at low pressures in these experiments,
Yes.
1 atmosphere.
Yes.
You go to 10 or 15 atmospheres where people do Fischer-Tropsch.
Yes, well, that depends upon the ratio. If you have more hydrogen and you are removing the carbon more rapidly, then you even have no filament growth, you have no much encapsulation, but you have to see the balance. So if you are only increasing the CO pressure, it's a disaster. You get a lot of carbon, but you have to do both, and there always is a balance. That's the difficulty.
When you the particles of the filament head are liquidous, or have a liquid-like behavior, even if it's low temperature, ODA doesn't work when it shows specific orientations of the grains, the metallic grains of the filament head. Do you think that I guess if it's liquidous, when you're cooling your sample or quenching it, are these liquids always recrystallizing to the same orientation?
I wouldn't say it is a liquid, because the metal particles still are exhibiting electron diffraction, also at high temperature. You only can say that the lattice, you can just deform the lattice rather easily. Auger did a very interesting experiment that he showed that the cone had really a circular cross-section. So it is not being bounded by crystallographic planes, it's not faceted. And you only can have that because the graphite layers, you can turn them around, and you get a circular cross-section of the graphite layer, and that brings about a circular cross-section of the metal part. So Auger did very remarkable work about that, very good work.
And the second question was, when you said you reacted over nickel for extended periods of time without filament growth, what was the activity of the gas phase? Or what gas did you use, and how high was the activity?
Well, actually, we did that for producing out of naphtha natural gas. So that was the British gas process, the methane-rich gas process. And we did that at a pressure, I think, of 20 atmospheres with butane in that particular instance. And we were running that for, I think, for half a year. Without having, but then the important thing was that we had not a completely reduced nickel catalyst. The extent of reduction was about 90%, and we could assure that all the nickel particles were still very well adherent to the support, the silicon support.
I don't see any other hand. Thank you
Thank you.
for the contribution. Thank you for the discussion. I guess you will all appreciate if I don't add any other speech to what has been said now. And I hope to see you everybody at 2 o'clock when we open our...